To celebrate the return of baseball, our guest this morning knows a thing or two about playing here in the Big Apple. He debuted for the New York Mets in April 1965 and finished his career in a New York Yankees uniform in September of 1973. He's likely most remembered by New York fans for his heroics in the 1969 World Series, a spectacular catch off the bat of Hall of Famer Brooks Robinson in the ninth inning of Game 4, stopped the Baltimore rally. The Mets won the game 2-1 in 10 innings. Then in Game 5, his RBI was the game winner of the deciding game of the World Series. 1969 World Series champ Ron Swoboda, welcome to Open.
Mighty good to be here. How are you?
It's so great to see you, Ron. Very excited for the return of baseball here in the Bronx. I think both Yankee and Mets fans are extremely pumped to have baseball back.
Well, both fans of both teams should be pretty excited. But I'm obviously biased towards the Mets, and still an abiding fan of that team, and been following all the changes over the winter with ownership and money invested. All of a sudden, I'm looking at a Mets team that acts like their major market, and I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think definitely very promising season ahead for the Mets. And, wanted to talk a little bit about that 1969 season for you. I know you batted 400 in that 69 World Series, but you once wrote in a New York Daily News guest column, I'm kidded occasionally by folks who wonder, how long are you going to keep living off of one catch? My answer, how long have I got left? I know it's a memorable World Series moment. I'm sure you don't mind being remembered most for it.
When you played 9 years in the big leagues, and you had some good days and some really bad days, it's nice that you're remembered for the best thing that ever happened to you as a player in a World Series.
Yeah, I think it's amazing too how quickly time flies, Ron. I say it all the time. We just celebrated the 50th anniversary of that 69 World Series in 2019, and now, of course, we're in 2021. You released a memoir that's entitled Here's the Catch, a memoir of the Miracle Mets and more in 2019. What was it like going down memory lane and writing this book, and then also celebrating that very special season with your teammates 50 years later?
Yeah, I think if I had anything that I was trying to say, sort of subtopic, it was that I'm just a kid that loved baseball coming out of a little town in Sparrows Point, Baltimore County, that the whole process of the game captured me and allowed me to develop it to a point where I could play in the big leagues. I didn't think I brought anything special other than the love for the game and the willingness to work at it. And I felt like as an outfielder, I made all the mistakes you could make in the big leagues, playing in those big high stadiums that were, a little tougher to see the ball and pick it up off the bat. And Shea Stadium was a very difficult stadium in that regard because it stood 3 tiers high and the ball never came out of the stands for the most part. And if you're not used to that, it's going to, as lighting changes and the seasons change, it's hard. People that came into Shea Stadium who had not played in that high background had trouble, and I certainly had my share of it. But I worked at it. Eddie Yost hit me thousands of fungos, our third base coach, and I think between him coming out there every day and my desire, I turned into a little better outfielder than maybe conventional wisdom would have judged me.
Ron, I think there's a lot of parallels to what was happening in this country in the late 60s and what is going on, of course, today. The Mets seem to reflect that psyche of America at that time, between the tragic assassinations of MLK and RFK, and then, of course, the violent street protests in the U.S. about the Vietnam War. The country really was looking for some type of feel-good story. The Mets seem to provide that. I realize, of course, some of the narrative has changed today, but there's still a lot of unrest in this country. And obviously, with all that is going on with the pandemic, I think people could use a feel-good story again. Do you think that maybe this year's Mets team might be able to provide that?
I know this. I was down in West Palm Beach last week and watched a Met game there. And of course, I've been catching the highlights online. And if you're a Met fan and you're not excited about what's going on here, you need to go have yourself examined. And if you're a Met and you're not fired up by the opportunity that a McCann and Lindor and guys like that are going to bring to the party. Pete Alonso maybe figuring it out a little bit more and being the kind of hitter he can be. If you're not charged by that, opening day with, with Jake out there doing it at 102, if you're not gassed by that, you're in trouble anyway. And I think they are. I'm psyched about it. I want to see this baseball season. I'm buying the game here in New Orleans. I got to see it because, it's nothing till you run it out there. You can do all this pre-stuff in spring training. Probably nothing more easy to get diluted by than a good spring training. You know what I'm saying? You can fool yourself. You bet. Until you run it out there in games that matter, you don't know quite what you have. And Diaz looked good in the spring, and you're like, okay, I'm ready for that. But until you see it in the regular season and see him rack up a few saves, and you go, well, now there's the guy we want. There's the closer we want. Till you see all of that in practice, it's just yap. And it's time for the yap to end and the games to begin.
Jacob deGrom, of course, I think for the Met fans today, kind of like a modern version of Tom Seaver. This past year, of course, has been so difficult with all the losses of the baseball greats. And, Ron, as a friend and former teammate of Tom, terrific. What did Tom Seaver mean, not only to the Mets, but to the baseball world?
Boy, oh boy, you're right about deGrom and the coolness that he takes out there. And, Seaver was a chunkier body. Seaver was a bull. deGrom, you look at him and you go, where do you get 102 out of that? It's just his mechanics are so pure. And Seaver was full max effort. And when you had Seaver out there, followed by Koosman in 1969, you knew you weren't going to have too many big losing streaks. You might not win it all, and from the beginning, we didn't know. Early in that season, we didn't know. We flopped around 500 until we won 11 straight. And then all of a sudden, everybody's eyes open, But Seaver and Koosman down the stretch that year, especially Seaver, where you knew you could win with 3 runs. You could give them 3 runs. So here's the pressure's off us as an offense, and the pressure's off the defense, because when you have Tom Seaver out there, the ball's not coming into play as hard as often. I mean, the fact that I make the catch in Game 4 of the World Series with Tom Seaver pitching, and Brooks Robinson hits a pretty good pitch that looks like trouble. It is trouble, and somehow I catch up with the darn thing. That didn't figure. Usually with Seaver, there weren't a lot of tough chances because of the quality of his arm and his ability to pitch.
That was part 1 of our interview with 1969 World Series champion Ron Swoboda. Tune in on Friday for part 2.